Hey guys, it's Ahmed from Sanctum Squad. It's not what you think. This is not a Fire King Mitsurugi deck profile. This is a new interesting one. Jake and I go back a long way. We theory a lot, and I think like theory is a very important element of the game. And there's this new theory that we've come up with, and we were thinking about this, and we wanted to introduce it into the video and also attach a deck profile within it at the same time. With the release of some of the new Mitsurugi cards that have just come out, these are some of the best ritual monsters that we've seen in a very long time. It's probably one of the best TCG exclusive archetypes that we've had since maybe the Dangers and the Cosmos and the Burning Abysses sort of like era. And I noticed something with a recent trend with a deck that's been doing well thanks to a player called Dinkabui. All of you may know, and it's Fire King. Fire King was really good in this format leading up to Alliance Insight. I don't think it's going to be as strong post Alliance Insight, but it's definitely something to look out for. As Malice becomes the more prominent deck, I think, after Ryzeal having Detonator hit to 1. Detonator is still a problem, and the Mitsurugi stuff along with it is still very, very problematic. But the reason why this, I think, did so well, A, was unexpected, but B, even with the expectation of it now, the turn 0 interruption and the ability to just grind and pop your opponent's stuff and like trigger off being popped had a lot of benefit in this format. And when you look at how simplistic the deck profile was, it was just a bunch of 3-ofs paired with, and this is the engine cards. I can't find my third Fire King Sanctuary, so I've only been playing 2 when I was playing Fire King in the previous weeks. If you look at the main parts of the engine, it's this plus the Extravs and the Pot of Prosperities. And the whole idea is like you get to like draw into more power cards and being able to play Impulse in the main deck, etc. This deck was really, really good. Like if you can't get going, you have enough interruption, and then once this deck starts to snowball, it's really difficult to stop being able to set up interruptions in your opponent's turn. And then I noticed a pattern, especially with the new Mitsurugi cards that came out. Like, there's a reason why this deck was doing well because of what's in the format and how it, what it can hold within its 40 card deck count in terms of like the level of non-engine. It's a difficult deck to stop once it gets going, basically. And I feel like it's the same thing with Mitsurugi. If we were to keep, and this is where the theory comes in, like the whole template of how deck building works, there's no right or wrong way about how you begin to kind of structure your deck building. And one of the things that I recognized was the number of starters in certain decks, the follow-up plays that some decks have. The best decks tend to have some form of way of following up a play from the previous turn. So Snake Eyes format, Snake Eyes Ash would search another Snake Eyes Ash in your opponent's turn, just so you had follow-up. Malice being able to just put all their stuff in the grave and then banish them all, just to like summon them all back again. The follow-up play seems to be what defines like a better deck in a sense. And the thing is with this deck is like you kind of create your own follow-up with like Ponix being popped and then it gets added back. But the general format of this deck, we know that this deck works. We've seen a lot of people topping regionals with this ever since Dinkabui like won the YCS and proved to like the world that this deck is actually very feasible in the format. And post Alliance Insight, with a new release of the Mitsurugi cards, I wanted to kind of like show something using the Fire King deck as a structure. So if you look at the Fire King deck, you've got like these 3 sort of main monster starters. And if you keep like this, let's say you keep the non-engine count the same. So you've got like the 3 Extravs and the 1 Prosp and all the hand traps. We'll get into that in a second. But what these cards did, you got Ponix, which is a 1-card starter. You've got Ulcanix, which is a 1-card starter plus a fire. And Kieran is it triggers the whole mechanic of what Vikings need. Like you need to pop something, and it avoids like imperms, veilers, and like can get you going in your opponent's turn. So and it uses the trigger mechanic for the deck. Grunix is a card that you kind of want to see one of, not all, but you still have to play 3 of it. Sanctuary is a starter, so ideally you want it at 3. And it gets you to the Viking Island, which is also theoretically a starter. Skyburns are cards that are really good. If you see it, it's not a bad thing. If you don't see it, you can search for it anyway. And then you've got what we call bricks of the deck. You've got Avata, and you've got Garunix. Avata may be a brick, may not be a brick in some hands. This is definitely a brick because you want to pop it and summon it off this. You can like work around with it, with like popping it with Kieran and things like that. But if you think about what all of these cards do for each other and what they do for the general mechanic and gameplay of the Yu-Gi-Oh strategy that you want to do with this deck, when you look at the Mitsurugi cards, you have the same sort of template. So let's look with Ponix at the moment. It's a 1-card starter, and it directly replaces itself with Mitsurugi Aramasa. It searches you a monster, basically. It's a 1-card starter, it's a body, it stays on the field, and you don't really need anything with it. The same thing with Ulcanix. Theoretically, Habakiri is a 1-card starter, but having a monster on board makes it more ideal. So theoretically, I make that resemblance similar to Ulcanix. If you have another fire monster, you can trigger Ulcanix. Whereas with Habakiri, you don't really need the extra monster, but it's ideal if you had a monster to tribute. And you've got there already your kind of 6 starters of the deck. What else was good about this deck is that Kieran could avoid things, and it could get like, it would trigger your mechanics. And if you think about the deck with Mitsurugi Prayers basically does the same thing. And also it can help play around draw in the draw phase, where you can tribute cards from your hand as well in the draw phase, search or special, search and special. And it tributes, so it triggers the mechanic for the deck, just as like Kieran pops, prayers, tributes, and also, as I said, plays around imperms, etc. So if you summon this gets impermed, you trigger this, tribute this. Basically the same thing that Kieran does for Fire King. And if you look at Garunix is a card that you really want to see. If you don't see, you can search for it. But you want to see one of, and it's basically the broken card of the deck. And the resemblance of that with Mitsurugi is Mitsurugi Ritual. Mitsurugi Ritual is insane. It lets you tribute cards from the deck to summon from hand. Can't be ashed, ironically, well, not ironically, like funnily enough, the same sort of thing as Garunix. Garunix can't be ashed when you're popping things from the deck. And then we move on to the 2 bricks of the deck. You've got Kusanagi. You don't really want to see, because if you see it and you're starting with it, you got nothing in your grave to search to add with anyway. And you got the Night Sword Serpent. The 2 cards that you really don't want to see. Not the end of the world if you see them, if the rest of your hand is good. But, you know, it is what it is. And then you've got your 2 cards that, you kind of want. If you see, it's not the end of the world. If you see, it's good, and if you don't see, you can search for them anyway. And that's your main boss monster, being Murakumo. And I've added Saji into this just because of the numbers, but theoretically, Saji is also technically a starter as well. So you can add that to this list. I'm not playing Futsu at the moment, but Futsu could also be in here. The reason why I'm not playing Futsu, because for a pure Mitsurugi build, I don't think it's that needed, like to be able to summon back. It could be also a brick as well, but again, you could throw it in. And then when you look at the Viking Islands, you've got Sanctuary that gets you into Island. And if you think about what in the Mitsurugi deck does that, you've got the new edition of Mirror, which names all of the ritual monsters, which makes pre-prep also theoretically a starter. Being able to get Mirror, and one of the names. You don't have to play this, because theoretically, if you feel like you have enough starters anyway, because you do have Saji as well, so theoretically this could be a starter. You could cut this down to 2, or you could put more non-engine. A lot of these cards do the same thing. You could also up this if you're worried about this getting banished and not having another one. The whole idea, though, is that there is a similar sort of structure to how the new Mitsurugi, if you wanted to play it as a pure, because obviously everybody knows about the Ryzeal version, the Ogdoadic version, but I do feel like pure has its feasibility. It's not going to be as like potent in terms of what it can end on because it doesn't have the other engines that can strengthen it, but it has the availability of the non-engine spaces and the ability, because they're all dark, to play Impulse, which I think is a very good, probably the best, if not one of the best hand traps in the game. So if we start the deck profile by showing you what the engine is, let's say these slots were flexible. So if we remove the Viking cards now, just to show you what the kind of structure of the pure build would be. You've got like the one Saji, the one Serpent, the one Kusanagi. You've got the 3 Aramasa, the 3 Habakiri, the 1 Ame Murakumo, and then you've got 3 Rituals, 3 Prayers, 1 Mirror, and then you've got 3 Pre-Prep of Rites. Again, if you feel like this is overkill, you can take them out from one on engine. I think I've taken them out for something else. I can't remember exactly with my recent build. I think it was just more non-engine, but we'll get onto like the other available cards that you can swap them out for. And then you move on to the non-engine. You've got the whole Pros and the 3 Extrav. And the reason why in the pure build this is important because you don't really need the extra deck, and you can run 3 of the things that you need anyway. It does play you into draw, and with Vikings as well, it played you into draw as well. But the likelihood of you drawing more of your non-engine to kind of like stall a turn is also still feasible. So like you draw 2, you have 6 cards in hand now going first. And you could be in a strong, if you get drawled, there's a chance that if you open Prayers, you got the thing that you needed anyway in the draw phase, or if you get drawled, you could still set up an Ame Murakumo if you needed to. And then you go to the non-engine, you've got like the 3 Impulse, as I said, the card that makes this deck really good. The Fualos, the Ash, the Called By, the Imperms, and even though it's not a hand trap, Econ. Because Econ triggers tributes, allowing you to take something your opponent controls, your monster comes back anyway, you get a search, you have that follow-up that we were talking about at the start that makes certain decks broken. You could have availability to play some other hand traps. So for example, if you weren't playing the pre-preps, there's things like DD Crows if you wanted to main or side. Veiler is something that I don't disagree with. I know people talk about the confliction with Impulse, but things like Nib and Veiler I don't think are a big thing, because like you have to just be smart when you see these in the same hand. You have to be smart on like whatever your opponent's playing, how you want to use these and when, to make sure you get max value and still be able to stop your opponent. But at the same time, Nib is kind of like a combo piece in a sense, whereas like if you nib the board, your guys are coming back anyway. So you could choose to replace the pre-preps with additional copies, additional hand traps, which could be 2 nibs, 3 nibs, a Veiler, for example. Even a Talents would work as well. The only reason I say like maybe more hand traps is because Econ isn't something that you can do going first, but it is theoretically a board breaker as well. Avoids imperms and things like that for your normal summon monsters. So yeah, like that is like the non-engine that you can play in the main. And then when you think about the extra deck, and in the version that I play 3 of every single card at the moment that I am playing. So I've got 5 different 3 ofs, but I've got a bunch of cards that I wanted to discuss. So you've got the Haggard Lizard, gives you a draw, can be quite valuable. The Cross Sheep, if you can summon back to its zone in the turn you summon it, or in your opponent's turn, it's just a draw 2, discard 2. I think the very, very important ones, and I think are mandatory to play as 3, are Typhon and where is it? King of the Fair Olymps, and potentially even Dynamundo. So the point being is like Typhon is Typhon. You can just normal summon a hand trap, get a body on board. King of the Fair Olymps searches you any of your monsters, and Dynamundo is a way for you to like trigger any of your or get your rituals back basically. So any 2 monsters, including a ritual monster, can get back the Ame to blow up the field as a disruption in your opponent's turn if you don't have a prayers, etc. Now, instead of the pre-prep, one of the things you could run instead is the Nadir Servant package. And you're most likely going to do this before you get impulsed. So, still talking about the extra deck here. Play the Nadir Servant package. You probably want to be running multiples of these. Not that one. These. Just to get your combos going. Gets you the free body on board. But you don't get to access your extra deck any after that anyway. Which isn't really a big problem. So that is an option, the Nadir package. Personally, I think Baguska is an important, because you can make rank 4s in this deck. Baguska is important, so if you do get drolled, you get to kind of end on something. And it is a continuous effect, so even if you've impulsed, summoning this in defense still won't impact on the impulse. You've got rank 8s that you can summon, so Zombestein being a onboard negate. Titanic, I know it's a light, which conflicts with your impulse. But if you're going first and you want to set up something, you're not really, it's really unlikely that you're going to be impulsing in your first turn anyway. So it's something that you're probably going to set. And with the current way the format's going, with Malice being strong and some other decks that have similar attributes and types, Super Poly being a board breaker, whether it's in your side or that replacement for your pre-preps if you're more non-engine, or even like instead of the econs. Here's some examples of like Super Poly targets that you can basically play. All these 3 are going to Tamanis, like 3 dark monsters, Earth, Golem, Agnister, and the Mud Dragon. You can also play the other Predator Plant, but I think these 3 are the main ones. If you're worried about Blue Eyes, there's the, I think it came out in Suda, there's that fusion that requires 1 light and dark monster and then 1 dragon. So that's also a good one as well. It just gives you some form of like additional non-engine that kind of like doesn't impact the deck, especially because like your hand's going to be quite big most of the time if you get to play. So having that discard isn't a problem. Now, if you do get drolled, as I said, like your non-engine's there to kind of like help you recover. Now, when we look at the side, you could play the trap. You could also main the trap. The deck also now has its own inherent kaiju. So if you want to play this as a 1-of or a 3-of, just to get rid of like some of your opponent's cards and get some of your own cards going. The virus cards are very good with the thrust package. As we just mentioned with the Super Polys as well. So this was, the whole purpose of this video is to almost like introduce the idea. And I think as communities grow, and the Yu-Gi-Oh communities is a very big one right now, I think it's very healthy to be throwing out content in a sense that like, to kind of like ignite people's interest. Because I know that a lot of people have a lot of interest in the Mitsurugi deck. And I think sometimes people put deck profiles out there and it's almost like this is the way to play it, full stop. But I do believe that like with decks that aren't completely solved, or there's not enough interest out there, or not enough big profiles that kind of like help people ignite that sort of creativity. What we wanted to do was kind of like show off like how some of the theory behind some of this deck building worked, and also what was like how to like ignite some of like your own creativity. So we'd like to hear and see like what some of you guys come up with like this sort of foundational profile as well. We're already on about 3 or 4 iterations of this deck now anyway. Some things I want to highlight before we end the profile is this card is good against us, or against this deck. But at the same time, unfortunately, it's a difficult one to kind of like main for us because the ritual monsters have to search first when they're tributed before they're summoned. So drawing yourself in your opponent's turn makes it a bit awkward because if you tribute these off, they can't really summon back. And also the confliction with Impulse, which isn't the end of the world. Being able to draw your opponent when you're going first, but normally if you're going first, this might be a dead card in your hand or a discard fodder, as I said, for Super Poly and things like that. You can play this card as some of your non-engine or side it. But it's just that last thing I wanted to discuss. It's something to consider with this deck. If some people are confused, are like, why am I not playing the card that this deck, that destroys this deck? Why am I not playing it myself? It's because of that reason. So yeah, I hope, and I know it's like a new way of like kind of profiling a deck, using the success of another deck to kind of like justify the foundation of how a new deck, especially because we're moving into a new format, and nationals are around the corner and there's a lot of locals to be played, maybe some regionals. Be interesting to see how maybe like the pure version of this deck grows, and how people find ways to play around draw, how people find a way to like improve the pure version. Because I do think it is a valid option for the format. It may not be the best version of the deck, but the best deck doesn't have to be always be the one that wins. You'll always get like tier 1.5 decks that do very well, that suddenly, because they did very well, all of a sudden they are considered the best deck because of their performances. It is obvious that Malice and maybe like the Mitsurugi Ryzeal version of this are probably going to be the best decks for post Alliance Insight, but it doesn't mean that you shouldn't play decks that you feel like suit your playstyle, allow you to like push for the creativity that you can kind of like work with. Everyone's got different levels of like how they want to play the game, and it's one of the good things about Yu-Gi-Oh at the moment. There are different strategies within all the decks, like the Malice mechanic, the Mitsurugi mechanic, the Ryzeal mechanic, the White Forest mechanic. They're all unique in their own way, and I feel like there is opportunity for creativity now. After this ban list, I feel like there's a lot of opportunity for creativity. So it's interesting to see with this new stuff how not even just this deck, all the other decks thrive. If you like this sort of video and you want to see more of these sort of videos, we're happy to like make more about how as a group and as a team like we theory a lot of these decks and come up with them. As you've seen from history on the channel, we've come up with a lot of cool decks in the past, and it kind of like feeds the other side of also the community. So like we're all about the competitive element of the game. There's a lot of us in the group that are very competitive, and a lot of us that want to like enjoy the game at a more like casual level as well, so locals level and things like that, and taking some really cool decks with us. So it's important that we're like hitting almost all areas of like the Yu-Gi-Oh community, because I think everyone should be included. But yeah, I hope you liked the video. Like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.